Hello and good morning. It's good morning for me. It's a very good evening to him. He's in New Zealand and we're welcoming him back, Paul, again onto the pod. It's episode 18. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning or good evening. Yeah, lovely to see
Yeah,
you again.
I know, in such a short space of time as well.
Twice in a week.
And look at this. Look, we have Stamford Bridge and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on full view to everyone.
That's the background of my old season ticket seat at the last game that I went to.
Oh, I bet that seems like a really long time ago now.
It does. Not the last game I went to, but it was the last game I went to before I emigrated. So it was Tottenham Manchester United. Nuno's last game in charge, but we lost 3-0.
Oh, that's a million miles. It just seems like so much water has gone under the bridge since
Just a
then.
bit. Yeah.
Wow. Right, let's get cracking. We
Mm.
are we're gonna talk a little bit about my club again. And we're both wearing tops as well. Isn't it? Weird. And we're going to cover a little bit on Spurs transfer activity as well. It's not going to be a massively long pod this time. We're not going to drag you around the world and then I'll maybe just have a little talk a little bit about the Champions League final last night. I know Paul hasn't seen it, so he'll be able to catch up later on with a bit of YouTube highlights or whatever. But yeah, so there we are. All right, mate. I'm going to hand it over to you because I know you're going to fire some questions about me about our prospective new manager.
Well, I'm just going to start with an open one, really, and see where you lead me. So, what do you think?
Do you know what? I was a little underwhelmed with the appointment. I mean, to be honest, most of the candidates that were being linked, I was a little underwhelmed with anyway. The only ones that were really of any kind of like note would have been like De Zerbi, and Ruben Amorim from Sporting, because they would have been the obvious two that would have had sort of like a little bit more experience in terms of the coaching side of things. But it's going to be Maresca, bar any because nothing's officially been signed and announced yet. From my understanding, that's just like tying up backroom staff, stuff like that. So it looks, bar some sort of absolute meltdown, it is going to be Maresca. So it comes with the Pep legacy. And it appears that obviously if you've worked with Pep, then you're a shoe-in for a top job, Vincent Company. And I've seen a lot of people mention the fact that we're searching for the next Arteta by doing what we're doing. So I don't know. Underwhelmed, yes, but when you actually look at the way he sets up, and I've done a bit of digging, and I've watched some YouTube videos from his time at Leicester. He did these coaching masterclasses. They're all up on YouTube that you can watch, and you see him talking about tactics and the way he sets up, the way when teams set up certain ways against him, how he so people, you might say, all right, you're giving the game away a touch, but then every coach does it anyway. Every coach does these online sessions. So it's a lot about what he did with Leicester in terms of setup, the possession, etc. That is very similar to how we finished the season under Poch once we'd gone on our good run. So I think it's just a case we're going to have to get behind him because that's who we're going to have, and you've got to back your new manager, and if it's all going to come down to results. End of the day, if you start the season well and you get and you get off to a flyer, then everything's going to be rosy in the garden. Yeah.
I,
That's
I
right.
don't think I don't think De Zerbi was ever really in with a shout of it because a bit like with Tottenham the year before,
Mm,
he came to Spurs and we played Brighton and we played him off the park and he had a meltdown on the side of the pitch, and he just showed that he's far too emotional, far too
yeah.
temperamental, and far too much like Conte for Levy to
Bit
go down that route again.
bit
And I
spiky
think
for the
it's the
board.
same with your guys. Yeah, your guys
Yeah.
seem to be the new owners seem to be ones that want to be in control and have control, and
Yeah.
someone who's going to toe the line. And even Poch towed the line 90% at Spurs, and then the moment he started veering from that line, he was given the boot.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Personally, I don't understand this this modern trend of anyone who spent 5 minutes in the room with Pep clearly is the next best thing. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been to Barcelona, so surely that gives me an opportunity, you know.
I've been to the Etihad
Yeah.
to pass it some, some open university in football, open, course in football management. Am I going to get the nod? Mate,
I
I'll
mean,
ring up like,
he did well at Leicester. He
yeah.
really
I
did
mean,
well at Leicester, didn't he? Leicester were playing some great stuff, and they
do you
obviously
know
got
what though?
promoted and they got up.
Look at some of the comments like from Leicester fans and all that. They weren't over enamored with the style of
No.
football.
Mm.
But and they kind of staggered over the line and got it there. But then, no offense to Leicester, but when you're talking about the squad of players that he had to use there compared to what he'll have at his disposal at Chelsea, potentially. I mean, we don't know, what players might get sold off, but it's a different ball game. And when you've got when you can retain possession with Caicedo, Gallagher, you've got top draw centre halves that can play out from the back properly, etc. So yeah, it's just one of the things. You're not really going to know how it's going to work. But yeah, Leicester fans were kind of split 50-50, which is a bit of a worry, but no manager's going to please every fan. That's the way I look at it. So I don't know. I don't know. And that's the thing. It just feels like we'd come so far towards the end of the season, and it just feels like a bit of a step back again. But
Not that the answer to this question goes as far back as it does for Tottenham, but I'm just trying to lead into a wider point. What was the last trophy that Chelsea won?
blimey, would have been the Champions League,
Okay,
I
what
believe.
year was that?
Yeah, 21.
Okay,
Yeah,
because the point I
yeah.
was going to make is,
Too good. Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
like yeah, Champions League under Tuchel, and then we won Super Cup and Club World Cup as well. But I mean,
okay,
major sort of like
yeah.
European domestic
Well, we'll count
trophies.
them. So that's 2021 was
21 was like three
21,
trophies.
the three big ones, because
Yeah,
you can only win the other two by winning the big one. So three big trophies.
yeah.
Um, but that's 21. Next
So,
season will be
so
25. So that will
yeah.
be 4 years. Now,
Well,
for modern day Chelsea, that's a very long time without a
modern day
trophy.
Chelsea, that's Roman Abramovich flying up the wall going, this is not good enough. I'm changing everything. Which is what Clearlake said that they weren't going to do. And yet, how many managers we've been through now since they took over?
Which was the point I was going to ask you. So, what this new manager seems to be like is what I would deem and what Tottenham would call a project manager. Tottenham were always in the midst of a project that never reached its conclusion. Its conclusion being success and a trophy. We never get there. We start a project and we never finish it. But we are a project club in the sense that we're always on that project. We're always on that journey.
Yeah.
Chelsea haven't been used to that. Chelsea
No,
have
we
been
haven't.
used to, you have a whole generation of fans, like let's say under 30 and under, who are used
Yeah,
to
well, or
constant success
maybe.
regardless of who the manager is.
Yeah, I think you could even say into, probably even slightly before Roman came in. We had a bit of money coming into the club under with Matthew Harding came in and he injected a significant amount of money into the
Yeah.
club to keep us going. And we'd had some FA Cup, right? Not league success, but we'd had a FA Cup success. We had a couple of trophies like under Vialli, Hullet, etc.
So you could even say 35, like under
Yeah,
35 who are used to it.
yeah, and anyone that's been going to the ground over the last 20 years, it has been a culture of success, and that culture of success has come when generally we've sacked a manager, brought someone in, and
Yep.
you
With
bring
mass
in,
instability in the background, but still winning on the field.
but yeah, but because you'd given them the tools. So we'd had a core squad of very very good quality players. You had from the minute Petr Cech was in goal, we had a great goalkeeper. We followed that with Thibaut Courtois for a few seasons, etc. So you had a great spine of a team. You had JT at the back. You had alongside him for many years. You had Ricardo Carvalho and Ashley Cole at left back, and
So
midfield
my question,
Essien, Lampard,
yeah.
Drogba through the middle.
So my question is, do you think that the fans are aligned with the direction that the club is going in?
No,
Because when you're used to that level of success, you're now going into a project. Like,
yeah,
you're not going to win the league next year. You're not obviously going to win the Champions League because you're not in it.
no,
Next season, probably success would be Champions League qualification.
yes, agreed. Yeah,
And a trophy, which same at Tottenham. But our ambitions, or at least our recent level of success, is so that if we get fourth and we win a trophy, that's the best season that we've had in 25
Yonkers.
plus years.
Yeah,
Whereas, for you guys, that's not the case. So, how much patience do you think your fan base have for a project?
none. None. And that is it. We don't, because we have been so used to winning, so we don't have none of that. We didn't have patience with Potter, because that was a project manager, and the club was saying, right, we're going in a different direction. This is how we're going to do it. Blah blah blah, and we start the season well. A few bad results after sort of like game 7 onwards, and he's gone because fans have had enough of that. When we're not into that. Club clearly was too big for him at the time, and then it just snowballs. Then and then you get in a succession of managers, and then we get Poch in, and maybe Poch, because of the Spurs link, wasn't initially accepted, and obviously a massive squad overhaul had happened already anyway, so that patience level was just like teetering constantly throughout the season.
Yeah.
And there were so many, even when we'd actually started going on an unbeaten run, we're still saying this is still, there's one guy who's actually got a very large Chelsea following, a guy called Lewis G, and he was just Poch out no matter what every week. Even when we were winning 5 in a row, Poch out. He's not good enough. We're an elite club. We should be hiring elite managers and that. But the problem with you can't hire an elite manager if you haven't got an established elite squad. So we've got a young squad, the youngest squad in the Premier League, and arguably maybe we have got it right with getting Maresca, because you take a young squad and he's used to working with young players, having been through the academy. I believe he I might be wrong, but I believe he won the under 23 Premier League coaching Manchester City's players in that young. So he's used. Obviously, there's a link with Cole Palmer. I believe the guy actually that we're being linked with taking from Fulham, Tosin Adebayo. I always get his name wrong, but him, yeah. Tosin. I believe he was in the City Academy as a youngster as well. So, which would make complete sense that we're trying to get him on a free transfer as well. So, he's a good young player. He's homegrown, so that's a no-brainer.
What do the first 10 games of the coming season need to look like for the Chelsea fans to get on board?
It needs to be how we finished the previous 5, and if the vast majority of the players are fit. If you've got Reece James back, you've got some fit centre halves, and you haven't sold Chalobah, then potentially you've got a squad. I mean, let's you look at the actual squad and you go down the squad list. I mean, it's really, on paper, it's phenomenal. On paper, that should finish in top 4. And there really shouldn't be any kind of excuses about it. It should finish in the top 4.
I would have said that if you had a half-decent striker, you would have finished in the top 4.
But we've got one.
As an outsider. Yeah.
We got one because he can play as a striker. And if you've got the likes of Mudryk Madueke and Palmer floating around him, and you got Nkunku through the middle in kind of like a sort of semi-false nine, then that should be a 20 goal a season striker. Supplement that with Nicholas Jackson, and throughout the flaws, and despite the missed chances, that's he was close to 20 goals in his first season as a 22-year-old striker. His first season in the country, only having one real absolute flyer of a top flight season for Villarreal. He's exceeded all his numbers in what he did in that season for Villarreal in his first season at Chelsea, and missed a lot of chances. So,
who's got more composure in front of goal, Jackson or Werner?
Jackson.
It was a joke question.
Jackson. But I, to be honest, to be fair to Timo, he gives you we're going to come on to him anyway, but he gives you work. He gives you that Timo gives you great work rate. Jackson gives you great work. And what I like about, do you know what though? Throughout all the missed chances and for the criticism of Jackson, 110% effort every game, never stop running, always running the channels, always creating space for the creative midfielders like Palmer, Mudryk, Madueke. If you don't have a player doing that, you don't function as a team as it is. So you need that, and he does that. He's passing. People got to remember he's 22. He's a kid.
Yeah.
He's like I say. He's had when he came back from the AFCON, different player, and he didn't have a great AFCON as well. I mean, he missed a lot of chances for Senegal out there, but was a good player, and he came back. And for me anyway, just a better player. The attitude on him is phenomenal. I can't knock his attitude. I know we had all the shenanigans with the penalty situation and stuff like that with when he trying to take the ball off Palmer, etc. But I don't necessarily mind that. I think that just shows passion. I think there's more to come from Nicholas Jackson, far more.
Cool. So back to the manager then. Do you think the manager is enough? Would he please the players? Is he what the players want?
I think that all comes into the coaching sessions. So from what I've read, I don't know how true it is, and despite the fact that a lot of them tweeted out their almost disgust and being absolutely gutted that Poch had gone. From what I've read, the players didn't necessarily enjoy Poch's training sessions, and they felt a bit burnt out afterwards, and a bit fatigued going into games, etc. How true that is, I don't know, because they all seem to be with him, and there was never a feel that he'd ever had a problem with the dressing room. So I think with Maresca, it all comes down to the coaching sessions. If he's putting on more tactical coaching sessions and less physical, perhaps that's something where the players will enjoy it more. So maybe you'll get a bit more out of them on the pitch in terms of understanding of position, particularly defensively, because defensively we were shocking all season. We were always creating chances and always having goal opportunities, but we couldn't, despite the fact that you had Thiago Silva, etc., people like that. We couldn't stop the ball going in the net. So if the training sessions lead to a little bit more detail, and apparently one of the things that impressed most about him when the board spoke to him, he apparently turned up with this just a dossier on every player in the squad, not even just like the top players from like say the first 15, 16, everything, under 23s, the lot. He knew about every player at the club already. He'd already done his tactical homework on them and everything. So that shows a pep level of
it does. The only reason why I smile when you say that is because exactly the same thing was said about Mourinho when Poch was sacked, and he turned up to Levy at this meeting and he had this big presentation where he went through exactly like you say, every single player in the club. This is what I'm going to do. This is how it's going to work. This is why I'll be successful. This is why you weren't successful in the past.
And arguably, to touch on that with Mourinho, I mean, the fact is that he was a week away from winning a trophy potentially. So, bad decision probably to sack him then. That could have been a springboard, really could, because a lot of managers win the Carabao Cup and becomes a springboard to go and do something. Because if for me, particularly with a young team, if you give them a taste, a taste. So, and yet again, going back, and what I will take my hat off to Poch is that we got to a final and we got to the semi-final. We just happened to
Yeah.
run into two very good teams. So that then gives the players a little taste of what could be. And if you give them that, then you could potentially unlock the potential in them to really push on. You know, when
Yeah.
we
No, I
signed
agree.
when we signed Frank Lampard from West Ham, we were signing a chubby kid that had got a bit of stick from the fans at West Ham. Was always said that he'd only ever been in the team because he was Harry Redknapp's nephew, and there was favouritism and that. And everyone laughed at us when we signed him for 11 million quid. Don't think many people looking back now, you know,
I don't think he was ever chubby. I remember like back in the day when we used to call him Fat
Fat
Frank, and I
Frank.
remember him getting sent off at the lane. I think it was
Yeah,
his first season at Chelsea, calling him Fat Frank. But he was too much of a professional to ever be like
he
out of
weren't he
shape
weren't
or
fat.
anything. He
Yeah,
wasn't.
he
No.
was an absolute tank.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. So,
so
so what do you reckon the new manager needs then? What do you reckon he needs, and what do you reckon he'll want?
I think he would like to probably retain some of the homegrown talent. So there's this account on Twitter, and apparently it's got sources close within the club. It only activates and briefly, it's not no followers and stuff like that. It activates and punches out a bit of news over X or Twitter, if you like, and then disappears.
Hmm.
Right. So this thing popped up and it came up and it claimed Conor Gallagher to Villa as a done deal.
I've heard that they're interested in him. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're saying that that's pretty much a done deal, and he's going. And and this particular account broke the story about Adarabioyo before anything
Hmm.
else in the media. So it appears, and Maresca as well, that Chelsea weren't looking at any other managers, and Maresca was their target. So because it's an unsourced thing, you can't really tell whether it is, and no one's ever going to know who the leak is if there is a leak within the training ground or the board structure, etc. But yeah, it's been very accurate so far. So apparently, so if I was him, I wouldn't necessarily be pleased with that. But when you look at the way he set up his team at Leicester, he generally went with one direct holder and then slightly more creative. So he had like whoever holding, and he had Winks as a bit more of a creative. So if you apply that to the Chelsea logic, and you were taking Gallagher out of the equation, then you would look at Maresca probably setting up with Caicedo in front of the defence, with Enzo slightly advanced on him, and then advanced on that a 10 with then two wingers. So, that could be Nkunku in the 10, Palmer in the 10, with Mudryk and Madueke either side. There's also, apparent, according to this account, that we're very close to agreeing a deal with Somerville from Leeds. And I know a lot of clubs
Hmm.
in the Premier League are chasing him. So, but how many right wingers do we need? We've got these two young Brazilians coming in as well. They're going to be coming into the squad and all. So I don't know, but yeah, that's what I'm hearing. If I was Maresca, I wouldn't necessarily be happy. I'd want to keep looking at the form from last season. You'd want to keep Chalobah and you'd want to keep Gallagher. Whether or not that's achievable, because we still need to tick boxes for PSR. So I don't know, but
So I
that's
want
what
to
I
go
would do.
back to the Chelsea fans end. So what's the relationship between the fans and the owners like at the moment?
Awful.
And what do you think it will be like should, say, Gallagher or some of your other prized homegrown jewels have to leave the club?
The vast majority of fans don't want this ownership group, and if we have to, we're tied to them for 10 years. That's fact, because a part of the agreement on the sale of the club um, from Roman is that they couldn't sell the club for 10 years. That's in the sale contract. So they're going nowhere. We're stuck with them. The only thing that would potentially appease me as a fan is I want footballing people making footballing decisions. So we've hired these footballing directors like Sir Paul Stanley and Paul Winstanley rather, and that. So those people need to be making the decisions about who gets hired and for what and does what within the football working. And Clear Lake, they just need to stay out. Go and sell shirts, build another hotel that you can sell, and then don't interfere with what goes on a pitch, because that don't end well. It never has done, not at any club. When you have people that are not qualified making decisions about what potentially happens on the pitch. So no, Chelsea fans are not happy with the new ownership whatsoever. We can appreciate the amount of money that's been spent. We can appreciate the effort, if you like, but it's direction. It's not. It doesn't have a direction. It's directionless. So that they made promises about what they would do with Stamford Bridge, and there's no clear pathway on that. Sizable as a club, because of the way it works now with revenue, etc. We can't really grow and put ourselves financially at a level, even with yourselves, because you've got the big stadium, etc. So you've got that revenue stream that can come from having that. But then a lot of that comes from what happens on the pitch. So if you're not successful on the pitch, you can't commercially be successful off it. So yeah.
Can you see a fan's revolt? I ask because, so like at Spurs as an example, I've always said the only way that Tottenham get any change in direction from Levy and Enoch is if that massive, impressive 60,000 stadium, suddenly there's a game and there's only 40,000 people in there. 20,000 empty seats. And there's been loads of protests outside the ground, but then everyone goes in and they buy their pies and they buy their club shirts and they bought their season tickets and they're spending their money. So, shouting outside the club with a banner for an hour before kickoff doesn't really do anything if
everyone still turns up inside. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can do that, but the trouble is with it, if a lot of like fans say, okay, well, we won't turn up to a game, there's enough football tourism that the stadium's never not going to be empty, and that's just it. There has to be other ways, and I think you can do that through social campaigns, online campaigns. I think the only way you really, really hurt clubs is a sustained level of bad PR, because I know what you're saying there about having banners outside the ground and marches and that it don't work. But then I look at United and I look at the pressure that the fans have put on the Glazers, and I think maybe had the fans not have done what they've done with the protests and stuff like that, perhaps they wouldn't have made the decision to sell that portion of the club and put the day-to-day running of the club in Jim Radcliffe's hands. So I think there is certain levels that you can achieve, and obviously we've got the CST, the Chelsea Supporters Trust, and they've always had a really, really good relationship with Roman and Marina when she was running the club, Bruce Buck, etc. They always sat with them and listened. I'm not sure that's so much happening with the new lot. I think they're very much a closed shop. They're going to do what they want to do. I don't necessarily think that they're that bothered with what happens with the fans, because people will just turn up and pay the money and come watch us anyway, because it's what people do if you can afford it. The real fans and generally are being priced out of football as it is anyway. So yeah, I don't think necessarily what happens within the ground would have any effect on Clear Lake.
No, I think that's a good point, because at Tottenham, the feeling is that Tottenham are almost trying to price season ticket holders out of season tickets, because there's a belief now, before the whole concept of the season ticket was to guarantee income and guarantee that the ground was full.
Yeah, and
now there's
atmosphere,
a belief,
and
but now there's a belief. You talk about football tourism, etc., and also once you're a big enough club, there's always someone who's going to take the seat. So there's a belief at Tottenham now that Tottenham don't actually want season ticket holders, because they can get more money out of
day-to-day
tourists or people that come. Exactly, because then people are more likely to spend more money in the club shop, spend more
Yeah,
money in the ground, as opposed to have the pub that they normally go to on the high street,
yeah. I mean, I'm
etc.
I'm
Anymore.
constantly getting bombarded with Chelsea emails about club hospitality,
Mm.
and and when you break it down, the gap between a normal ticket for a normal match and the base level of hospitality, it really isn't even that much difference anymore. I think the average ticket price for a reasonable sort of like category game, high category game for Chelsea last season, you'd be looking at probably 55, 60 quid.
Yeah,
And yet
crazy
I
money.
and yet I can pay maybe what 150 and have a meal, a very nice padded seat, sat up in the the middle tier of the. All
Yeah,
right, you're not with the fans, etc. Who're going to be screaming, shouting, and banging the boards and all that. But if you're going to pay a shitload of money to go and watch a football game, well, why not do it in comfort?
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's the thing. That is the thing. That's where we're at. It's every club. It's every club. Because people Premier League is broadcast worldwide, and people will travel from all over the world to come and watch games. And of course, those people have got a bigger disposable income than most, you know, homegrown fans, if you like. And they know for a
yeah.
fact that we can all sit at home and watch it on the fire stick. So yeah,
So last question then on Chelsea. Early
yeah.
days, obviously, but are you optimistic for the new manager and the new regime and next season?
I am, as much as I was underwhelmed with the appointment, having done a bit more homework on it and tactically how I think we'll set up, and obviously with one or two additions to the squad, uh, I think we're probably priced out of the Osherman market now. Um, so, but I'm relatively happy. I don't think the squad needs, from what they achieved. I don't think then off the back of the form, I don't think they need major overhaul. Supplement one or two, cut a bit of deadwood, um, Sterling, etc. Get the couple of the last high earners off the books, and I would think that I would feel very positive about that squad and its potential, and perhaps it rather than an overly egotistical manager, maybe going down this route of having a coach who's going to purely just work on tactics and get them in the training ground and work day to day on everything that's going to happen rather than being a Mourinho, a Tuchel, a bit more spotlight focused. Maybe that will work better, but time will tell, and results will be the significant factor. There
Oh,
we
well,
go. Well, that's Chelsea
that's my
done.
Chelsea segment.
Tick. Right, so we'll talk a bit of Spurs then, and obviously we'll centre it on transfers and a bit of transfer speculation because obviously, and we mentioned it earlier, Timo Werner. So you got him for another year on loan. Personally, I think that's a fairly sensible move for his flaws. Like I alluded to, you get work rate and you get a committed player. But what's your thoughts on Werner for another year?
Well, I always thought the decision that Tottenham made with Werner would be a signal as to how grand our ambition would be for players in the summer and what we were looking to do next year. I had hoped that we would say to Werner, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for your odd goal and your assists and your work rate and covering someone who was at the Asian Cup. But ultimately, we're gonna spend bigger. We're going to go in a different direction." And of course, we haven't done that. We've kept him, but we haven't. Even though it was only 15 million to keep him permanently, we've
Yeah,
gone for
the
this
loan again.
another loan. So I'm, if I'm honest, I'm disappointed that we've kept him because I don't think he's good enough for what we want to achieve. He definitely fits into the way that Ange wants to play, and he does the job. On paper, if you were to judge him and you went, I haven't got his stats in front of me, but if you were to go,
Yeah,
okay, you played this number of games and you did this number of assists and this number of goals, you'd go, oh, well, it's a no-brainer to sign him. But I don't know if this is what it was like at Chelsea. But he doesn't pass the eye test, does he? You know, he just
Very much
doesn't.
so.
You
Yeah,
know, so his stats are fine, but ultimately, I don't think he's a good enough player.
yeah. You
But
you
of
love
course,
him for
what?
the effort and you love him for the commitment, but ultimately the end product just isn't quite there.
No,
So that final pass, clean through on goal. If it's clean through on
yeah.
goal, you never feel like you have the
No.
confidence that he's gonna finish it.
But of course, the real interesting thing with him or with the deal is that Tottenham haven't signed him permanently for 15 million. They've
Yeah.
got him on loan for another year.
Well, I think that
So
business wise, that makes a little bit more sense because the way I would look at that is that he's I think he's just touching on 30. So in terms of resale value, if you sign him for 15 million, then there isn't any. Whereas if you take him on loan, you get another year out of him without the financial commitment to the 15 million quid. Even if you pay 4 or 5 million on a loan fee,
well,
you're
that's
over
what I'm
end.
hoping. I'm hoping that we go, okay, this summer we've got Werner. You know, we're going to pay all his wages, which is a lot of money, but there's no transfer fee. We're going to spend all our money on getting the right striker in this summer. Werner can do a job as Son's understudy for this year, and hopefully that means we're good enough in the squad. And then next summer we'll say thanks, Timo. You know, thanks for all you've done, but ultimately no. And then we're going to go big and buy ourselves that
Yeah, but
that left-sided winger. And then
w-
the other thing, of course,
will he do
which
it though?
I can only hope that we've basically just bought ourselves another year. The other issue with the one more year on loan is our under 23s won the under 23 Premier League,
Yeah,
and there are some very good players in that team. So I'm hoping that what Andy's thinking is maybe that some of them guys can get some games in the Europa League, or
yeah.
maybe they go out on loan for a
Well,
year, and then in a year's time they're ready to, kind of come in. And it would be great to have two or three Spurs youngsters because we haven't got any now really. Kane's gone, Skip will probably leave, so it would be nice to have two
well,
or
we've
three kids in the squad.
we've had a question for you.
Mm.
Apparently, I personally I've not seen this yet. So there's a bit of speculation apparently that you could make a move for Eze from Palace, and the question is would you think that would be a good addition? Well, I think he would. I think he potentially him and Madison in a
Mm.
midfield
I
with
think
a
that would be
holding.
amazing.
Yeah.
He's I think it's CAA Base, which is his agency, and that
Okay.
agency has a really close relationship with Tottenham. And they have so Eze's family have been in a box at Spurs, the CAA base box, two or three times apparently,
Yeah.
including when Spurs play Palace at the Spurs ground. So there's a relationship there. Most of the Tottenham players are looked after by CAA base. So to do a deal in theory with the player should be relatively straightforward. It's just whether they can strike a deal with Palace. But yeah, I'd love
The
it. I think it'd be perfect for Spurs.
So there's a youngster that Paul Big P. He's a West Ham fan. Uh, he said he's Mikey Moore, good youngster, and he's a good friend of
Yeah,
his family as well. This guy, so he's
but
in the chat.
he'll
So
know he'll
yeah,
know more about him than me then. But I think Spurs have got definitely high hopes for him next season because he's so young. Apparently, Spurs can't loan him out.
okay,
So I'm wondering, I'm thinking, and kind of hoping that a lot of these guys that played in the under 23s will go out, get loan deals in Premier League, First Division, Championship,
yeah,
and then that opens a pathway for Mikey Moore to play in the under 23s regularly and again get games in Europe and maybe because he came off the bench in a couple of Premier League games, so
yeah, yeah.
trained a lot with the first team towards the end of the season. So yeah, and he scored an amazing goal for England against Spain in I think it's the under 17s.
Yes,
I
yeah,
think it
the
was.
under 17 tournament. I saw the goal. Yeah, cutting off the right and top
And
binsed
he
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and he's a winger. You know, so going back to the whole Burner thing, maybe it's like Mikey Moore's a year away from being a first team player. So we
yeah.
keep Werner for a year
And if you
and
start
then
bringing him in
Moore
now,
comes in.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I know at times Richarlison's played off the left as well, and that's another two actually that I'll pressure on as well because there has been speculation um, that the Spurs are willing to listen to offers for both Brazilians, Richarlison and Emerson Royale. I was actually watching Richarlison live last night on his Instagram. I couldn't understand. Obviously, he was talking in
I was going to say
Portuguese.
he's injured.
He was talking in Portuguese. So
Yeah.
obviously, I didn't have a clue what he was saying, but I was tempted to start typing in the chat. You know where you're off to. But, yeah,
And it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's about generation of funds. Personally, I'd keep him because I think if we sell him, we got to sign two strikers.
yeah,
So you're
yeah.
better off keeping him. But then we've got a lot of players that are out on loan and a lot of deadwood, and I think it depends on
Well,
how much money we can get for them
there
guys.
was another one and all because Jed Spence, obviously, you know, young lad, young English fullback. He'd brought him in from Borough. He didn't really work out under the previous managers. Obviously, he was out on loan when Ange came. Genoa are keen to sign him on a permanent, but I still think that he's you know, I think he's only like 23, 24. So is that not worth a look? I know you got Pedro Porro, but if you're going to lose Emerson Royale, then surely you'd want to maybe keep him, especially as homegrown quotas, etc. Keep
No,
him in and around the squad.
I think we get the money for him, to be honest.
But then, I mean, it's
And
not
then
going to be a
we
considerable amount. I mean, I think that the part of the option to buy on the loan was 8.5 million, and apparently they're not willing to
they
even
don't
pay
want to pay.
that. So
I don't think he's too many managers have turned him down, said he's not good enough, or said his attitude isn't good enough. And then again, probably not for next season. I think we need to sign a reserve fullback that can cover both the left and the right side. But the
yeah,
captain of the under 23s either plays right back or he plays in central midfield. He flicks between the two. And of course, if you think the way that we play with our inverted fullbacks, the right back ends up in midfield most of the time anyway.
yeah,
So he could, I don't know enough about him, but he could be one that's sort of like there for the future. So you sort of want to clear a path for these kids. I'd love nothing more
yeah,
than in a year or 2 years' time to have, him, Mikey Moore, Jamie Donnelly, all, there's Will Lancashire, technically a Spurs. They signed him from Sheffield United for a couple of million, but he's a Spurs fan, so
yeah,
he's a Spurs boy. He's up front. He's like a boy in a man's body. And then we've got guys like Scarlett and we've got guys like Parrott as well. So we need to find out if these guys are good enough. So
yeah. I mean, we were
all
lucky,
of that
obviously,
deadwood.
when we had the transfer ban, and we you know we ended up bringing a load of these young players in. Um, but I don't see the point in having these, you know, grade A academies if you're not going to give them an opportunity. And
Yeah,
you, like I say, I mean, you know, if you look right the way back to Kane, it was because of injuries and stuff like that that he ended up getting his opportunity.
yeah.
And then, you
Well,
know,
I go back to my kind of favourite time as a Spurs fan was probably the second half of Mauricio Pochettino's first season. So
yeah,
before the title challenges, not the Champions League final, but that second half of the year where we had Kane, Townsend, Mason, and Bentaleb, who had all come through the youth system.
yeah,
And they played together. They were obviously very young, so they had so much energy, they had so much enthusiasm, they had so much passion for the badge. There's this great picture where I think Kane has scored, and the three of them are running after him, and you can just see like how
yeah,
happy and kind of pleased they
you
are.
know,
And I'd love to get back to that position. So Townsend and Mason both played about 50 Premier League games for Spurs. Kane's obviously like a once in a generational talent. I think Bentaleb played about 50 games as well. If we could get three, four, five of the young crop that we've got at the moment
yeah,
in the team, in the squad, playing 50, 60, 100 games, I just think that, that would be amazing and supplement the talent that we obviously have. And again,
yeah,
that goes back to my point with you guys about the project. You have to be patient for that.
you
If you
do.
want three or four kids to come in, it's not like bringing three or four kids into the United team in the mid-90s.
No, it's a different
They're,
ball game now.
they're winners. We're obviously
Yeah,
not.
the Premier League's just far too competitive to be able
Yeah,
to do that, and obviously managers don't tend to take a risk doing that
yeah,
because you know it's a results driven business, and 4 or 5 bad results in the Premier League can cost you your job now.
But I'm hoping that's where Europe can really help us, because that Europa League is like 8 games group stage.
Yeah.
You only have to finish, I think, in the top 4 to qualify.
So
So
that's where you can
you'd
bed
like to
in
think,
players.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mikey Moore as an example, give him some time. Jamie Donnelly, if he's still at the club, Will Lancashire, them type of guys, give them an opportunity, give them some game time, and then you
Well,
never know, maybe
I
a
think
bit
we've just
exactly like Kane.
I think we've just discovered our next pod. So I think what we should do is we go away, the pair of us, and we look at our academies, and we do a little bit of research, and we do, maybe we'll pick 5 who we think that could potentially over the next, say, 18 months to 2 years could potentially be the ones that make those breakthroughs. So we'll have that. We'll call it the Academy Pod. With the Talk Football Academy Pod.
The great thing about them is, as much as you want to find the next Kane, the whole situation you guys have got with Gallagher, it can help you out of a massive hole, can't it? I mean, we had Stephen Corker at Spurs for years, and we loaned him out every single year.
Yeah.
And we got a loan fee every single year, and then Celtic ended up buying him. So he didn't play that. He didn't play that often for Spurs, even though he was kind of expected to. But then by the time all the loan fees add up, that probably paid for the academy for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've over the last. I mean, this is how we've had on average around about 40 odd players out on loan. This is how Roman kind of kept the books balanced, because he had so much money coming in through loan academy players. So yeah. It's not an idea.
That's dried up, I suppose. That's really dried up. So you think, as I said, Kane, Townsend, Bentaleb, Mason, then Winks kind of followed through relatively quickly, and then Skip, obviously. But then it's kind of dried up a bit since then. So we need that new generation of them youngsters to come through. And of course, other than Kane, even Kane was got 100 million for him. But the other guys, Mason and Bentaleb and Townsend, we got good money for them guys. Corker. Winks went to Leicester for good money, and
it's like 10, 15 million or something like that. Yeah.
So, but they all played, and they all cared for the club. They played 50 odd games. 50, I think Winks was more. Kane, obviously, hundreds. That's what you want, don't you? You want to.
So one final bit of news. I hadn't seen it come up, but it's been mentioned in the chat there that Tosin apparently is having his medical for signing for us. So do you know what? As like a little bit of a final thought, I have my little say on that, because again, he can. I think he can play for Nigeria as well. But I mean, he's an English player, and a lot of people have maybe criticised the signing, saying it's not an elite level signing, etc. But full season in the Premier League with Fulham, probably arguably one of the better centre halves in the Premier League this season. 26, homegrown, free transfer, no brainer. So
I haven't seen anything of him other than the fact he's been linked with Tottenham for a couple of years.
Composure on the ball, reads the game very well. Composure playing out from the back as well. Very good passer of the ball. Just a solid, dependable centre half. No frills, just a solid, dependable. I think that's probably what we need. So
that sounds like a good deal. Good free transfer.
I think so. Yeah. And on that positive note, I think that's it. I think we've covered our agendas for today.
Sounds good.
And we'll have a little look at our academies, and we'll come back with one for that. And obviously, if there's any other news and stories that pop up over this next week or so, then we'll get together again and get you back on. And never know, we might be on a new manager, but before the season even starts. We've had a look at it in training. We've had a couple of pre-season friendlies. We don't like the look of that. Let's get rid of that, and we're going to go and get Pep's uncle. So I'll say thank you to another Paul, Big P, West Ham fan. Hopefully, going to have him on the pod soon as well. Just got to organise a time that matches up, so we're going to get him on. He's going to come on and talk all things West Ham. So thank you for all your questions in the chat, mate. I appreciate that. I know it's very early in the morning, and Paul's obviously going to be off to bed shortly, because he's going to have to go to bed because he's got to get out for work. So
King's birthday tomorrow, mate. So day off.
is it? You get a
Is
day
it
off
not a
for
day
that?
off? Is
We
it not a
no,
day? No.
no, we don't get a day
Oh,
off.
it's a day off here. Yeah, yeah, long weekend.
We're being shortchanged. And he lives in this country. What am I paying my taxes for?
Who knows?
Right, so that was episode 18 of the Talk Football podcast with Paul. So yeah, don't forget, if you want to connect with the show, click the link that's in the description, and you can follow us then to the Linktree page where you can connect with all aspects of the show. So you got all the audio stuff from previous seasons that you can catch up with. You can email the show if you prefer on talkfootballpdc@gmail.com, and that's how you get in contact with us. I will have one little note, because the link now for the charity walk we're doing in September is now up as a button on the Linktree page. It is for children with cancer. So it's all done through Just Giving. So I don't touch and I don't get to see any of the money or handle any of the money whatsoever. So all your donations go directly straight to the charity via Just Giving. So get on there. Make sure you click the if you're a UK resident and taxpayer, make sure you click the for gift aid as well, because then they get the tax back, etc. So yes. And if anyone that wants to do the walk, you're more than welcome. All you need is a pair of shoes and your favourite football top, and turn up at Stamford Bridge at 10 a.m. on the 8th of September this year. So yeah, that's us. All right, thanks for coming on, Paul.
No worries. Anytime.
I'll let you go. I'll let you go to bed now.
Thank you very much.
Nice one. Right, we're going to say goodbye to our friends over on YouTube. So we'll sign off there, and we'll see you on the next episode.